Good afternoon, 6th grade. Welcome to your first science lesson. I hope you have the piece of paper for filling the notes that looks like what is on your screen right now. I hope you have your science book. I'm just going to introduce the chapter to you. So I'm going to start on page 1 and talk you through things, and then we'll get to the skills page, which is actually page 5. So page 1, Chapter 1, we're going to talk about classification in this chapter. The first 7 or 8 chapters in the book is what we call life science. So we'll learn all about life. Then we'll move into physical science as we work our way through the book. But you can see as you turn the page now, and you're on page 2 and 3, how they give you the vocabulary words that you're going to be facing in this chapter, and a few examples of what that looks like, and different things that are out there as we just see the pictures on how we're going to look at how things are, alike and different as far as all these wonderful living creatures that God has placed onto this planet. So if you turn the page again, every chapter starts with an experiment. We will not be able to do too many of them because you're all in your own houses. And so today's first lesson is actually on page 5. Chapters always start out with this skill that they want you to have in science class, which goes along with what you might be learning in reading in English or at other times in your life, which just helps you read and understand science a little bit more. If you're ever bored and you want to try to do the experiments that are there for you, you certainly can. The experiment on page 4 says, hey, go to the store, buy 3 different types of mushrooms, cut the stems off, place them on a piece of paper underneath the cup, and leave them there for 2 days, and then you should have them leave a mark. And so what they're trying to show you with that is different types of mushrooms will leave different marks on a piece of paper, kind of like a fingerprint. And so as we work at classifying things, separating different plants and animals and living organisms into different categories, scientists use all kinds of different things. I would never think of looking at the underside of a mushroom and the print it leaves as a way to tell mushrooms apart. But scientists do those things. That's why they did that experiment. Okay, page 5, the how to read science, the skill this chapter is comparing and contrasting. And if I read those first 3 lines to you, it says this: when you look at how things are alike and different, you are comparing and contrasting. When you're comparing 2 items, you're telling how they are alike. And when you're contrasting them, you're telling them how they are different. So you can see, number 1, comparing 2 items, tell how they are alike. And why we do that in science classes, I constantly want to take new information that I'm getting and try to apply it to something I already know in my brain. My brain constantly wants to make connections to something it already understands. That is how it'll help me remember and process new information. And so I'm always trying to find some little similarity to say, oh, I know this, and now I can take that new information and I can apply it to you. Number 2 is the exact opposite. Contrasting 2 items tell how they are different. So another way to approach this is saying, hey, I'm trying to connect this to something I already know, but I can do the exact opposite. I can say, hey, I know this, and because I know this, and this is not that, I can remember it that way by saying this is just the exact opposite of what I already know or understand. And so we look at ways to find similarities and differences. Now, if I go back to my title of the chapter and we talk about classification, classification usually makes me think, how are things alike? So I can put things that are alike in the same category. But as I find the differences in certain living creatures, I have to say, I need a new category. And so that's what scientists are doing. And what we're doing with this lesson is saying, I understand why I need the skill of comparing and contrasting with chapter 1, classifying living things, so that I can understand why scientists put living things into the different categories that they do. So now we're going to get a practice of saying, hey, how do you compare and contrast as we read science throughout this book? The 2 bulleted points say this: clue words and phrases such as similar, like, all, both, in the same way, and as well as signify comparisons. And so I said, hey, pick 3 of those. I think they gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You pick your favorite 3 that help you say, these are clue words. As I read the chapter and I see those words, they're about to give me a comparison, things will be like. Next bullet point, clue words such as different, unlike, in a different way, and in contrast signal contrast. And so once again for number 4 now, you pick down 3 of those clue words that'll help you be able to do that. And then they say, hey, let's practice this skill. So it says clue words are marked in the article below. They're highlighted in that orange color. Now I'm going to read this little paragraph to you, and we'll talk about similarities and differences, or comparing and contrasting, and then you just need to understand for the rest of your life, they don't highlight those words for you in a science book. And so they're giving you 1 paragraph to practice, but in the future, they still want your brain saying, hey, I heard the word similar, we're comparing. I heard the word different, we're contrasting, even though they're not going to be highlighted for you anymore, obviously. So it says this, fungi. Molds and mushrooms are 2 kinds of fungi. Molds, such as the black fuzzy mold that grows on bread, are thread-like fungi. In contrast, mushrooms are club fungi. So now between those 2 sentences, I can see the different. Molds, thread-like, mushrooms, club. Differences. Fungi that are somewhat umbrella-shaped. So now they give you a definition of what the word club means so that I understand that in the scientific meaning. Both, so now I have a comparison, both molds and mushrooms grow root-like structures that often are hidden underneath the ground. So I have a comparison. Hey, both of these things have roots. Both of those roots are underneath the ground. All fungi, which would include both molds and mushroom, once again a comparison, get their food from other organisms. And so we're going to learn what a fungi is as we go through this chapter. They gave us 2 examples of molds and mushrooms. You can see they pointed out 2 similarities and 1 difference. At the bottom of your page, they say apply it, make this graphic organizer. That's what your assignment's going to be on your other piece of paper. They're going to have you compare and contrast arthropods to type of insects. And then so you can see the paragraph on the front side of the page, you flip it over and you do it on the back side on the Venn diagram there. And so everything in the middle where those 2 circles overlap is what is alike. And then obviously on the sides of those things is how the 2 things are different. And so if I was taking this on as a 6th grader for assignment, I would read a sentence and tell me if it's a comparison or a contrast, and then put that in abbreviated form on the back side. So if I'm looking at your worksheet with you and getting you started, I read the first sentence. A spider and an ant are both arthropods. So I read that sentence, I flipped it over, and I have spider, alike, and ant, and I would write in there under the alike side, both arthropods. I don't have to write the whole sentence. There's not a whole lot of room there. So I just read the first sentence. I said, this is showing me a comparison. Put in the middle, little bullet point, both arthropods. I flip it back over. I read the next sentence. This means they have jointed appendages. A joint is a bendable point in a limb, such as an elbow. Okay, so I learned what the word jointed means, and then as I keep reading on, I kind of learned what the word appendages mean, like a limb, an arm, a leg, a finger. Those are appendages. And so arthropods have legs that have joints in them like you do. You have knees that bend and elbows that bend. Okay, I took that sentence 6th grade and I didn't write anything down. All that sentence is it's a definition of what an arthropod is. And I already used what an arthropod is. I already said this is alike. Now I move on to the third sentence, which says, both also wear their skeletons on the outside. I hear the word both. I know it's a comparison. I flip my piece of paper over, and in the alike section, I have skeletons on outside. You might know that's called an exoskeleton. If you want to write that down, great. Okay, now you got 3 more sentences that you can do on your own, separating them either into spiders or ants or alike. And remember, 6th grade, you do not have to write the whole sentence down. Just get the main point from the sentence and put it in the right category. Blessings on your science assignment.